Hey everybody, more gaming content this week. Hopefully my audio levels are okay. This mic has been giving me a bit of problems, so I'm way off of it, so I don't peak. But yeah, we are talking Shadow of the Erdtree DLC for Elden Ring, and this is my gameplay from Commander Gaius, and then I just kind of mucked around afterwards, and there it peaked. So you can see I'm relatively far into the game, but this is my midpoint impressions. I kind of like doing this because then I can kind of stick a pin in it and then tell you my final impressions afterwards. So here's what I got. So I'm right into it. Like, I got pretty obsessed with Elden Ring. On my New Game Plus playthrough, the game didn't click with me the first time through until very near the end, when a lot of the storylines kind of came together and we finally got some, well, as many answers as you get from a Soulsborne game. But I played it mainly for the challenge and just the sheer visuals the first time around, but I really got hooked on the story in New Game Plus. And I'm only New Game Plus now. I'm about level like 260 something. My vigor, endurance, and strength skills are around 53, 55 apiece. I'm doing sort of a mix of a strength faith build with some dexterity through it. It was sort of all-purpose. I chucked out sorcery fairly mid-game first time through and kind of stuck with the talisman, the faith spells, not the arcane spells. But yeah, it's big, this DLC. I mean, the base game is big, and at first the map doesn't look huge, but it twists and turns and goes up and down in itself, and it has like quite a few secret passages and hidden. It's one of these games where, I mean, okay, you can't be afraid to die, period, but this one is especially, you think there's stupid deaths, but if you think something is down somewhere, it probably is. There's one drop where, dear God, you have to drop down and land on like a broken piece of wall so you don't die, and it took me quite a few tries. And then of course some of the bosses, I'll try not to do too many spoilers, because what I like going in to anything from Software is that kind of creeping doom, bad things happened here, and letting your mind kind of play with exactly what bad things happened here. And the environmental storytelling is top notch. There are legitimately beautiful areas. You'll see the blue fields in later bits of this video. Just gorgeous. I actually put this in the gameplay I recorded for this just so you can see it, because it's just so pretty. And then I stumbled on a mini boss. So that's this game, right? It is pretty dense. There's a lot of stuff packed into a relatively small footprint. There's more game in this DLC than all of Stellar Blade, and I'm saying this already, and I'm only partway through. There is the beauty mixed with some very new, disturbing, disgusting stuff, like Volcano Manor level disgusting stuff. And then it's the, you'll see familiar enemy types, some with a twist. That's all part of the storytelling. I'm still trying to piece it together, figuring out exactly what happened, but there's definitely ties to major story points. Now, you have to finish the Moog fight, which takes a while to get to, and then the Radon fight in whatever game you're part of. And I've already got some information about Moog. And my theory about what's going to happen is very Elden Ring. And I thought some of my takes on the base game were out there. And I'm trying to avoid some spoilers because I know some people haven't finished the game. But I thought I was nuts in my interpretation, and then I looked into the wiki, and no, that's what the game's about. So, the mystery of the whole thing is a huge part of it. You know, what actually happened to Mikola. Oh boy. You know, going in the Moog Mikola stuff is majorly creepy. But no, that is just the ground level. We go into sub-basements and sub-basements and sub-basements of ick and creep in so far. Like, I'm not even there. And, bad things happened here. And there's already a theme, almost a kind of a pseudo prequel thing going on with old kind of factional hatreds, and there are some characters that don't appear in the main game that are still tied into the whole too many people with names that begin with M and R and G. George R. Martin. So many M's. So many. But definitely, you know, the Empyreans and, you know, all the stuff that is in the main game still gets mushed in here through a whole bunch of very, very bad decisions and desperation. Now, in terms of challenge, before I started playing, people said it was really, really hard. Is it easy? No. Is it, like, I am finding, now, it makes me want to go back and play Sekiro, because, you know, that game so far is, to me, the most challenging of the From Software titles. I think the only thing that makes it more challenging than the base game is that the Mikola fight, not the Mikola, the Milena fight, no, Millennia fight of this game is not optional. But, I mean, everybody wanted to beat that fight anyway. I know I did. It became a freaking grudge match. And so you do have to sort of try a few things. I like the tactical elements. I don't find my tactics the same as the way you're supposed to do it, but, you know, everybody finds their way. There are certain things that are really useful in certain fights. I found swapping out shields with different attributes really helped in certain fights. You know, some that block magic, some that block fire, some that just to be able to block, because a lot of the bosses are too big and too fast to effectively evade, and speed is definitely what ups the challenge. So if you're used to super speedy bosses, much like a lot of the Bloodborne bosses, different ones you will struggle with. I ended up with a particularly gross bug boss way too early, and so I backed away. I'm gonna go back to it later. Somebody said, "Oh, you're there way too early," so I backed off. And that's the thing. This game is intended for you to get involved with the community and swap techniques and tricks and how you did it. And that's why I'm talking about it midpoint, because I would still like more signposting for certain things. I know that's not the way they do things, and that's cool. You know, I'm more than happy to ask for help and, you know, suggestions and all that stuff when I need it, or even go to the, was it Fexalife or whatever, the site, the whole wiki for Elden Ring, and look stuff up. Because that really is part of the experience, to find out what other people's favorite weapons were. I like Marika's hammer. But then the pest darts, love that spell too. But there's some cool holy spells that you can pick up. And I switched out my Sword of Night and Flame for a bigger Sword of Night and Flame style thing. But it's one you pick up from a boss in this game. But I don't find it super hard, so you've been psyched out by the people that say, oh, it's hard. I've found it about as challenging as Elden Ring was the first time around, which I find Elden Ring actually easier than Bloodborne, definitely easier than Sekiro. It's a good introductory game to these sorts of things, because you can explore and level, and just, if something's too hard, back off, come back to it later once you've leveled some. And the way they did the game balance for this is really clever, because there's new, you know, the Erdtree things, and then the sacred, I don't remember, it's all ashes and tears and tree, shadow, light, all that stuff. The way they've done that, so that there's a new way to build your character, is quite cool. I did find leveling my endurance and my my vigor, my hit points, helped a lot. You know, you're talking the difference between 2 hits and you're dead and 3 hits and you're dead, and trust me, that extra hit helps a lot. And then the ability to block and evade and do stuff. So that's sort of my little tips. But with that, again, I had to stack my endurance for the harder fights in Elden Ring. And so it's working. And there's a lot of different ways to take down these bosses. And I know people like to make it more difficult for themselves with melee weapons only and no ashes. Maybe someday that's not how I play. But there is a lot to do, and it continues that don't believe the hype theme. Like, okay, you have the lore of the realm, and, you know, oh, Queen Marika and kind Mikola, and, you know, as you go in, you start realizing that, you know, the things that are bright and shiny may not be good for you, and the things that are more shadowy might not be so bad, except when they are. And it's one of these worlds that actually is amoral or morally gray. I know morally gray is this thing that people roll their eyes at now, because it's such an overused thing. But this is a world where you really get to decide how you feel about what's going on. The game does not tell you one way or another what you're supposed to think about various characters, you know. The biggest creeps in the whole thing can be very helpful to you. And the people who seem really nice at first can, be some of the most awful people out there. And the whole theme of conquest and a lust for power and what people will do to seek power and what a cage power can be is really on full display in multiple ways. I don't want to give too much away about the story because unraveling it is part of the fun. One thing I will say is pay attention to the new gestures you pick up. There are various puzzles that they're required for that are sort of not optional. One kind of is so far. One definitely, in order to get to a section of the map, you need to do. And they are of the same variety as in Elden Ring. So the two new gestures I've gotten so far both have had a puzzle component to them. And there are usually multiple entrances and exits to various places, notably the Shadowkeep Fortress. So keep that in mind as well. And there's like I said, there's a lot to do. The new gear I have experimented with. I ended up going back to my trusty Radon cosplay. Just because it's the most all-around tanky armor that isn't too heavy. But I have been shifting up some. I've been switching the shields a lot. The talismans, the upgraded talismans are quite handy. I've actually been using them. And because some of the mid-grade armor is decent enough, I've been able to get away from my carrying capacity crutch and still equip a great shield. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of your build and how you play. But obviously there's different choke points for different types of characters. And I don't think there's any shame in looking up the stats on some of the bosses, because some of them are pretty tough to figure out exactly what causes the most damage, though the ones I've encountered so far, they're all sort of a game of don't get hit. Block evade, take your shots when you can, but don't get hit, because these motherfuckers pound you. And then it's just a question of what your playstyle is in terms of how you like to do damage. I've found that purely physical damage tends to be the most effective thing, though, holy damage tends to be pretty good too. But it varies. There are, my sort of go-to is, if in doubt, try Scarlet Rot, then try Holy, then try either Bleed, Frost, or Poison kind of thing. But it is very engaging, and even if you're not picking up the environmental story points, I know I'm not getting them all, certainly. The combat alone is cool enough that it's enjoyable. The only thing I will say is that a refresher on the controls would have been nice, because I forgot how to sprint, and that gave me a really hard time in the churchyard of Shadowkeep. And there were a couple... Oh, I forgot how to counter move, too, because I hadn't played in ages. And you're so overpowered in New Game Plus that you get sloppy with, with your combat, and you do have to get it back. There are certain parts where block and counter is essential. There are certain parts where that rolling towards the boss trick is essential. And some of those red cloaked sorcerers are really freaking tough, and something with a knockdown is very, very useful for them. So those are my tips. Because I do find that a lot of the enemies outrange you, especially early on. And if you do have to go back and level some and upgrade new gear, I know I've done that. You gotta hit, if you read the bottom of the map, it tells you how to go back to the Lands Between map. So that was good. And go back to, the, what the heck's it called? The hold, where the blacksmith and the spirit tuner are. The round table hold. That's right. But and going back and talking to people multiple times has been useful so far. But it really is a game that does reward exploration. And if you've got a physic that allows you not to lose your runes then on death, trying stuff and seeing how it goes is essential. There are a couple things, especially a very, very critical action where someone gave me a hint. I'll give it to you. There's a certain name character where when you meet them, keep drinking. They're starting mowing my lawn right now, so there might be noise. But that's the clue. When you meet them, keep drinking. Because they're and read all the object descriptions, because there's a lot of interesting lore about hidden in the object descriptions and who's doing the cookbooks, and it's the Elden Ring has always been a game where the little clues, little notes are obvious once you know what they mean, but before that it's like, huh? And the extra inventory tab, which I had to do something to get the new items tab to work, but it's really useful. I'm so glad it's there, because my inventory gets so cluttered because I'm afraid to sell anything. And I know that's dumb, but it's like, what if I need it? Because every so often you need a good bleed weapon. You need a good rot weapon. You need a good poison weapon. So there's a lot to do. So far, I'm really understanding why people are saying it's too bad that a DLC isn't eligible for awards on its own, because it has enough playtime to be a satisfying game in and of itself. Not in terms of, the 300 hours I put into the main game in Elden Ring to platinum trophy it, just so I was allowed to talk about it. Nobody said, you just suck at the game. Oh, I platinum trophied that fucker. But it is obviously not that long, but it is a good chunk of game. There's dozens of hours, and I think if I were to guess, I'm about halfway through, just because of the way the story's going. But we'll see. I'm not getting super hung up. Wow, that's loud. Yeah, that is picking up. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up this video. It's not I wasn't hung up after the first dungeon that I realized I just wasn't ready to do. I didn't get hung up on one boss for too long, but I'm recording this before I do Twitch on Tuesday. I'm going to attempt Mesmer on Twitch, so I understand that that's a tough one. So we shall see. Until then, Okay, hope you enjoyed this. And if you do like this, you know, help support my content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. I don't focus on the Patreon as much as I used to, but if you do want monthly support, if you enjoy my video content and you can handle the monthly support, it's greatly appreciated. Or you can buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Also super important right now. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video.